The night he appeared at my door, I was elbow-deep in blood and antiseptic, fighting to save a wolf-mauled deer, thinking about nothing more than keeping its heart beating and getting through another quiet evening in my sanctuary. I had no idea that within 24 hours, my entire world would shatter because of one sentence spoken by a king I didn't recognize. Before we continue, I just want to wish every one of you an amazing Happy New Year. May this new year bring peace, good health, success, and joy to you and your families. Thank you for choosing to spend your time here with me. Your support truly means the world. Please keep supporting and growing this channel by liking the video, dropping a comment, and subscribing if you enjoy the stories. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to the story. My name is Judith Crane. I am 29 years old, and for the past 5 years, I have been running my healing practice alone on the edge of the Northern Wolf Territories. It is not a grand place, just a modest stone cottage with a clinic attached, herb gardens that sprawl wild, and land that borders a forest most humans fear to enter. My parents died in a territorial massacre when I was 16, caught in the crossfire of pack politics they wanted no part of. Overnight, their dream of bridging the human and supernatural worlds died with them, and I was left to raise myself in the ruins of that dream. I stayed because this cottage, this practice, is the last piece of them I have left. Running away was never an option. Life here is simple but demanding. I wake before dawn to tend my gardens, treat whatever injured creatures find their way to my door. Fox, rabbit, sometimes even wolves who trust me enough to seek help. I collect herbs by moonlight when their potency is strongest, and I keep my head down, avoiding the supernatural politics that orphan me. I am not wealthy, but I survive. Most nights it is just me, the animals, and the ancient forest that watches from beyond my fence line. That evening in late autumn felt no different. The air had turned sharp, carrying the metallic scent of an early frost and the distant howl of wolves deep in the territory. I was in my clinic working on the deer, my hands steady despite the severity of its wounds, soft instrumental music playing from an old speaker to calm the animal. Then I heard it, not tires on gravel, but the heavy, deliberate sound of boots on stone. That alone made me freeze. People do not just arrive at my door after dark, especially not on a blood moon night when the pack laws are invoked. I wiped my hands on a cloth and looked up through the window to see a figure emerging from the tree line. Tall, impossibly tall, wrapped in a crimson cloak that caught the lamplight like fresh blood. As he stepped into the glow of my porch lantern, I saw the ceremonial armor, ancient bronze plates etched with wolf sigils, leather straps across a broad chest, and a face that was all sharp angles and barely contained fury. His dark hair was wild, and there was actual blood on his cloak, fresh and gleaming. But what stopped my breath were his eyes, molten gold, burning with an intensity that seemed to see straight through my walls. He walked toward my door with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, his boots echoing on the stone path. Every instinct I had screamed danger, but I was already opening the door before I could think better of it. Something about him was familiar in a way I couldn't place. "Are you Judith Crane?" His voice was deep, commanding, the kind of voice that expected obedience. I nodded slowly, my heart hammering. "That's me. What do you want?" He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Didn't apologize for the blood or the late hour or the way he'd just materialized from the darkness like a nightmare given form. "I need a mate by tomorrow." The cloth slipped from my hand. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him, that the exhaustion from a long day had finally caught up with me. But his expression didn't change. No humor, no uncertainty. Just desperate, raw urgency. "I'm sorry," I said carefully, my voice steadier than I felt. "You need what?" Instead of retreating, he pulled back his cloak to reveal not just the armor, but a wolf's head medallion at his throat, the mark of the Alpha King. My blood went cold. "My name is Vale Thornheart. I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories." He watched me, gauging my reaction. If I do not present a mate at the Lunar Council summit by dawn, I lose my throne. You saved my life 3 winters ago when I was wounded and in wolf form. I have come to claim what is owed. I stared at him, memories crashing back, a massive silver wolf bleeding out in my garden, golden eyes pleading as I worked through the night to extract wolfsbane from its blood. I'd never known who he was. Never wanted to know. I stepped back, shaking my head. That debt doesn't make me your mate. Find someone else. There is no one else. The desperation broke through his royal composure. My cousin has manipulated pack law to seize power. If I fail, he will wage war on every human settlement bordering our lands. Thousands will die. I need you. Then you'll have to come and live in my place. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. His expression shifted from shock to disbelief, the mighty Alpha King rendered speechless by a human healer in a blood-stained apron. What? I crossed my arms, surprising myself with my own boldness. You heard me. I want no part of your pack politics, your throne, or your world. If you need me, you live here, in my cottage, under my rules, as a human. That's the deal. For a long moment, he just stared at me, and I was certain he would refuse. Certain he would turn around and leave me in peace, and I could go back to my quiet, safe existence. Then Vale Thornheart, Alpha King of the Northern Wolf Territories, did something I never expected. He bowed his head. Then I accept your terms. And just like that, with 5 words and a blood moon rising over the forest, my simple life ended and something far more dangerous began. We didn't speak much after that. Vale stood in my doorway like a statue while I finished stitching the deer's wounds, his presence filling the small clinic with an energy that made my hands shake. When I finally released the animal back into the forest, he was still there, watching me with those unreadable golden eyes. The ritual must be performed at midnight, he said quietly. We have 2 hours. I wanted to argue, to demand more time, but the set of his jaw told me there was none. So I nodded and led him to my garden, the only space that felt like mine in a world that was rapidly spinning out of my control. The garden was overgrown and wild, exactly how I preferred it. Moonflowers climbed the stone walls, their white blooms luminous under the rising moon. Vale removed his armor piece by piece, setting each plate carefully on the grass until he stood before me in only dark trousers and a thin shirt that did nothing to hide the scars crisscrossing his chest. Evidence of a violent life I wanted no part of. He produced a ceremonial blade from his belt, the silver metal etched with ancient runes that seemed to pulse in the moonlight. This will hurt, he warned, his voice devoid of emotion. The bond requires blood. Yours and mine. How romantic, I muttered, but I held out my wrist anyway. Vale's hand was steady as he made a shallow cut across my palm, then repeated the motion on his own. Our blood welled dark and red, and when he pressed our palms together, I felt it, a shock of electricity that raced up my arm and exploded in my chest like lightning. I gasped, trying to pull away, but his grip was iron. The words, he commanded, and began to speak in a language I didn't recognize, ancient and guttural, a language of wolves and old magic. The forest around us went silent, as if every creature held its breath to listen. He guided my hand to his chest, over his heart, and placed his bloodied palm over mine. The warmth of him seeped into my skin, and I felt his heartbeat, strong, steady, terrifyingly alive. When he finished the incantation, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't read and spoke in English for the first time. By blood and bone, by moon and stone, I bind myself to you until death severs what tonight has joined. My turn. I repeated the words, stumbling over the formal phrasing, feeling foolish and trapped and strangely exhilarated all at once. The moment the final word left my lips, pain erupted in my wrist. I cried out, watching in horror as silver light traced across my skin like molten metal, burning a mark into my flesh, an intricate wolf's head surrounded by thorned vines. The bone mark, proof of our bond, visible to any supernatural creature who looked at me. Vale released my hand and stepped back, his own wrist now bearing an identical mark. "It's done," he said flatly. "You are bound to me by pack law. My maiden name, if not in truth." I stared at the silver scar on my wrist, still burning, still beautiful in its terrible permanence. Somewhere in the forest, a wolf howled its approval, and I realized with creeping dread that I had just signed away my freedom to a king I didn't know, for a world I had spent my entire life trying to escape. Vale picked up his armor without another word, and I knew tomorrow would bring the true cost of what we'd just done. I woke to the sound of splintering wood and a string of curses that would make a sailor blush. Dawn hadn't even broken yet, just the barest hint of gray light filtering through my bedroom window. I stumbled out of bed to find Vale standing in the wreckage of my kitchen table, his head having collided with the low-hanging oil lamp, his shoulders too broad for the narrow doorway he'd just attempted to navigate. "This place," he growled, rubbing his temple, "was built for children." "It was built for humans," I shot back, surveying the damage. "Welcome to my world, Your Majesty." The reality of our arrangement hit me fully in those first few days. Vale Thornheart, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, could command armies and inspire fear with a single glance, but he couldn't navigate my cottage without destroying something. He broke 3 mugs trying to hold them with hands meant for weapons. He had to duck through every doorway. And when I showed him the narrow bed in my spare room, the only other sleeping space I had, he stared at it like I'd offered him a coffin. "I'll sleep on the floor," he said stiffly. "You'll sleep wherever you fit," I replied, too exhausted to argue. But worse than the physical incompatibility was everything else. The first morning, I woke to find him gone, and panic seized me until I discovered him an hour later at the forest edge, blood on his mouth, the remains of a rabbit at his feet. He'd hunted. Of course he'd hunted. "You can't do that here," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I treat animals. I save them. You can't just—" "I am a wolf," he interrupted, his eyes flashing gold. "This is my nature. And this is my home. My rules, remember?" The standoff lasted until his stomach growled audibly, and I dragged him inside to make him eat bread and eggs like a civilized creature. He looked miserable the entire time. I put him to work out of spite at first, I'll admit it. If he was going to live in my world, he'd participate in it. I handed him baskets for herb gathering, and he took them like they were weapons of torture. I showed him how to hold an injured sparrow without crushing it, and his massive hands trembled with the effort of gentleness. When a farmer brought in a colicky horse, I made Vale help me walk it in circles for hours until the blockage passed. "I have led warriors into battle," he muttered after the 3rd hour of walking. "I have negotiated treaties that prevented wars. And now I am a stable hand." "Now you're useful," I corrected, and I swear I saw something flicker in his expression. Not quite amusement, but close. The turning point came on the 4th day. A young fox arrived at my door, its leg caught in a trap, bone exposed and infected. I worked for hours trying to save it while Vale watched from the doorway. When the fox finally stabilized and fell into exhausted sleep, I looked up to find him staring at my hands with something like wonder. "You didn't give up," he said quietly, "even when it seemed hopeless." "That's the work," I replied, washing the blood away. "Showing up. Trying. Even when it's small and thankless." He was silent for a long moment. Then he knelt beside me and began cleaning my instruments without being asked, his movements careful and deliberate. And for the first time since he'd crashed into my life, I saw not a king in exile, but simply a man trying to find his place in a world he didn't understand. Maybe we both were. The knife slipped. It was such a stupid mistake, the kind a novice would make, not someone with years of practice. But I was tired, distracted by Vale's presence as he held the sedated deer steady, and the scalpel caught my thumb instead of the infected tissue I was trying to excise. Blood welled immediately, dripping onto the examination table. Vale's reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. His entire body went rigid, his eyes flashing gold, and a low growl rumbled from his chest that made every hair on my body stand on end. He dropped the deer's leg and grabbed my wrist with frightening speed, bringing my bleeding thumb close to his face. His nostrils flared as he inhaled deeply, and the expression that crossed his face was pure shock. "That's not possible," he whispered. I yanked my hand back, wrapping it in a clean cloth. "It's just a cut. I'm fine. Your blood." He stared at me like I'd transformed into something else entirely. "It carries wolf essence. Dormant, but unmistakable." "That's insane. I'm human. My parents were human." Were they? The question hung in the air like a blade. Vale turned away, pacing the small clinic like a caged animal, his mind clearly racing. "I need to see your family records. Any documents, photographs, heirlooms. Anything." "Vale, this is ridiculous." "Now, Judith." The command in his voice was absolute, the alpha king surfacing through the domestic facade we'd built. Against my better judgment, I led him to the cottage's small attic where I kept the few belongings salvaged from my parents' home. A trunk, barely filled. Some photographs, a few books, my mother's journal. Vale seized the journal with reverence, flipping through pages until he found what he was looking for. His face went pale. He showed me a page where my mother had sketched a family tree, names and dates going back generations. At the top, barely legible, was a name that made his hands shake. "Silverthorn," he breathed. "Your mother's maiden name was Silverthorn." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, with fear and awe in equal measure, made my stomach twist. "The Silverthorn line was hunted to extinction 30 years ago," Vale continued, his voice hollow. "They were wolves with a rare gift, the ability to bond with any pack, any bloodline. They could unite rival territories or shatter them from within. The old councils feared them, saw them as a threat to the natural hierarchy. So they were systematically eliminated." I felt the room tilt. "My parents died in a territorial massacre. They said it was random violence." "It wasn't random." Vale's eyes met mine, and I saw genuine anguish there. "They were found, and they were executed for what they carried in their blood. Your mother must have hidden her nature, lived as human to protect you."
"No."
I backed away, shaking my head. "No, you're wrong. I'm not. I can't be. The bond mark shouldn't have taken on you." He pressed on relentlessly. "A human can't bear it. But you did. Because you're not fully human, Judith. You never were." I looked down at the silver scar on my wrist, still gleaming in the lamplight. Evidence of something I didn't want to understand. My entire identity, everything I'd built my life around, crumbled in an instant. "If anyone discovers this," Vale said quietly, "if the council learns a Silverthorn survived, they will come for you. Darien will use it to destroy us both." I sank onto an old trunk, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "Why didn't they tell me?" "Because they loved you." Vale knelt before me, and for the first time, his touch was gentle as he took my hand. "They died keeping the secret, so you could live." And I realized that the truth I'd spent my whole life running from had been inside me all along, written in blood I never knew was different. They came on the third night after the revelation, when exhaustion had finally pulled me into uneasy sleep. The crash of breaking glass jolted me awake, followed by Vale's roar. Not human, but pure wolf, a sound of rage and warning that shook the cottage walls. I grabbed the crossbow I kept by my bed, the one my father had modified with silver-tipped arrows for protection against rogue wolves, and stumbled into the main room. What I saw stopped my heart. 3 massive wolves, larger than any natural animal, were tearing through my clinic. Vale stood between them and the hallway to my bedroom, already shifting, his body contorting in ways that should have been impossible. Bones cracked and reformed, skin rippled with silver fur, and within seconds the man was gone, replaced by a wolf the size of a small horse, his coat gleaming like moonlight, his eyes burning gold with lethal intent. The largest assassin lunged. Vale met him midair, teeth finding throat, and the sound of tearing flesh filled my sanctuary. But there were 3 of them, and they were coordinated, trained. While Vale grappled with the first, the other 2 circled, looking for an opening. Looking for me. Terror froze me for only a moment. Then training took over. I raised the crossbow, hands steadier than they had any right to be, and fired. The silver bolt caught the second wolf in the shoulder. It shrieked a horrible, almost human sound and stumbled. Silver was poison to their kind, burning through supernatural flesh like acid. Judith, run. Vale's voice was barely recognizable, distorted by his wolf form, but the command was clear. I didn't run. I reloaded and fired again, catching the third assassin as it tried to flank Vale. The wolf collapsed, convulsing as silver spread through its bloodstream. But the first wolf, the leader, had broken free from Vale's grip and was charging directly at me, jaws open, death in its eyes. Vale intercepted it with the force of a landslide. They crashed into my examination table, shattering it to splinters. I watched in horror as they tore into each other, blood painting my walls, my floor, everything I'd built. When Vale finally crushed the assassin's skull between his jaws, silence fell like a curtain. He collapsed immediately, shifting back to human form, his body covered in deep gashes that bled freely. I dropped the crossbow and ran to him, my healer's instincts overriding everything else. Don't, he gasped as I pressed my hands to the worst wound on his side. Silver. You used silver. I know what I used. My voice was shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting me hard. And I know how to treat it. Hold still. I worked through the night, extracting silver fragments, stitching torn flesh, washing away blood that seemed endless. Vale didn't cry out, but I felt his pain in the way his muscles tensed, the way his breathing hitched. When I finally finished, as the first light of dawn crept through the broken windows, he caught my wrist gently. You saved my life, he said quietly. You could have run. Should have run. I don't run anymore. I met his eyes, surprised by my own certainty. This is my home. I hesitated, then forced out the truth. Your pack now, I suppose. Something shifted in his expression, a wall crumbling. My parents died in an ambush like this. I was 19, away at a summit, and they were killed in their own home while I was playing politics. His voice broke slightly. I never forgave myself for not being there. My parents died protecting me from a truth I didn't understand. I whispered back. I never forgave them for leaving me alone with it. His hand found mine, our matching bond marks pressing together. We're not alone anymore. And in the wreckage of my sanctuary, covered in blood and surrounded by death, I realized he was right. The burning started 3 days after the attack. At first, I thought it was infection from a cut I'd missed, but the pain radiated from the bone mark on my wrist, spreading up my arm like molten silver coursing through my veins. I tried to hide it from Vale, but when I dropped a basin of water because my hands were shaking so violently, he knew. It's beginning, he said, his voice tight with something between fear and anticipation. Your blood is waking up. Make it stop. The pain was blinding now, my vision blurring at the edges. Please, Vale, make it stop. I can't. He gripped my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. But I can guide you through it. Trust me. That night, he led me deep into the forest, far from the cottage, to a clearing bathed in silver moonlight. The full moon hung above us like a watching eye, and I felt its pull in my bones, in my blood, calling to something inside me I'd never acknowledged. Let it come, Vale instructed, already beginning his own shift. Don't fight it. Fighting only makes it worse. But I was terrified. The pain intensified, my bones feeling like they were trying to break through my skin. I fell to my knees, gasping, and that's when I saw them, my hands changing. Fingers elongating, nails darkening into claws. I screamed, but the sound that came out was wrong, distorted. Judith breathed. Vale was beside me in wolf form now, his massive presence somehow comforting. Your body knows what to do. Let go. I looked up at him, and the world shifted. Suddenly, I could see everything, every individual leaf on the trees, the tiny movements of creatures in the underbrush, the heat signatures of prey miles away. My hearing sharpened until I could hear the forest breathing. And my eyes, I caught my reflection in a puddle and saw gold staring back at me. The transformation ripped through me all at once. Bones snapped and reformed, muscles tore and rebuilt, skin gave way to fur. I should have died from the pain, but instead, I felt alive in a way I'd never experienced. When it was finally over, I stood on 4 legs, my body powerful and strange and somehow right. Vale approached slowly, his massive head level with mine, and touched his nose to my muzzle. The gesture was gentle, welcoming. Then he turned and ran, and instinct took over. I chased him through the forest, my paws barely touching the ground, the wind in my fur, the scent of earth and pine and prey filling my lungs. We ran for miles, leaping over fallen logs, splashing through streams, moving as one through the darkness. Everything that had held me back, fear, doubt, the weight of my human existence, fell away. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward something, toward freedom, toward belonging. We stopped at a ridge overlooking the territory, both of us panting, our sides heaving. Vale shifted back first, and after a moment, I followed, the transformation easier this time, my body already learning. We sat naked under the moon, his cloak wrapped around both of us, and I started to cry. I feel everything, I whispered. The whole forest, the pack bonds in the distance. You. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. I'm not alone anymore. Vale pulled me close, his arms strong and warm. You never were. You just couldn't see it yet. And as the moon watched over us, I finally understood what my parents had died protecting. Not a curse, but a gift. Not a burden, but a belonging I'd been searching for my entire life. The Lunar Council summit was held in an ancient stone amphitheater deep in the territories, surrounded by towering pines and watched by hundreds of pack members who'd come to witness judgment. I'd never seen so many wolves in one place, their eyes tracking us as Vale led me to the center of the arena. The council elders sat on raised platforms, their faces carved from stone and centuries of tradition. Everything was going according to plan until Darian stepped forward. He was smaller than Vale but moved with a predator's grace, his dark hair slicked back, his smile all teeth and malice. He held up a leather folder for all to see. I present evidence that this bond is fraudulent, he announced, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. Witness statements that Vale Thornheart paid this human woman to pose as his mate. Documents showing no prior relationship between them. And most damning, proof that she lived in isolation, with no connection to our world, until the very night before the deadline. The council murmured. I felt Vale tense beside me, his hand finding mine. The eldest council member, a woman with silver hair and eyes like winter, rose. The evidence is compelling, she said coldly. But the law provides for one final proof. The soul hunt. If your bond is true, you will hunt as one, think as one, and return with a shared kill. The bond will guide you. Deception will be exposed. And if we succeed, Vale demanded, then your throne is secured, and all challenges are forfeit. Her gaze shifted to Darian. Including your claim. We were given 30 minutes. Vale and I shifted at the forest's edge, And the moment our wolf forms touched, I felt it. The bond, not just a mark on my wrist, but a living connection between our minds. I could sense his thoughts, his strategy, his fear for me. We moved as one through the trees, tracking a stag whose scent we both caught simultaneously. But 8 minutes in, everything went wrong. Darian emerged from the shadows with 4 wolves at his back, all bearing the mark of his personal guard. "Hunting accidents happen," Darian said, his wolf form massive and scarred. "Such a tragedy." He went straight for Vale's throat. They collided with devastating force, and I heard the snap of bone, saw blood spray across the forest floor. Vale collapsed, his back leg bent at a wrong angle, and Darian circled him like death itself. Something inside me broke. Not fear, fury. Pure, incandescent rage. I launched myself at Darian before his guards could react, my teeth finding his shoulder, my claws raking across his face. He was larger, more experienced, but I had something he didn't, everything to lose. I thought of my parents, murdered for what they were. Of Vale, who'd trusted me with his life. Of the cottage I'd built from grief and stubbornness. Darian tried to throw me off, but I held on, biting deeper, feeling his blood hot in my mouth. When he finally dislodged me, I didn't retreat. I attacked again and again, driving him backward until he stumbled over roots and fell. I stood over him, jaws at his throat, and felt the bond mark burn with power I didn't understand. Through our connection, I felt Vale's consciousness joining mine, lending me his strength even from where he lay wounded. Together, even broken, we were stronger than Darian could ever be alone. "Yield," I growled, the word somehow forming despite my wolf form. Darian's eyes widened in shock and fear. He yielded. When we returned to the amphitheater, me dragging the stag we'd claimed after the fight, Vale limping beside me, the council rose as one. The silver-haired elder approached, examining our wounds, the way we moved in perfect synchronization despite our injuries. "The bond is transcendent," she declared. "A silverthorn and a king. The council recognizes this union as true and binding." Vale collapsed the moment the words were spoken, and I shifted back to human form, catching him. As I cradled his head in my lap, our bond marks pressed together and glowing bright as the moon, I finally understood what we'd become. Not king and subject, not captor and captive, but equals, chosen and true. 3 months had changed everything and nothing. My cottage still stood at the forest's edge, though Vale had rebuilt the clinic with his own hands, making it larger, stronger. The garden had grown wild and beautiful, moonflowers climbing toward a sky that no longer felt like a cage. And I had learned to navigate both worlds, healer by day, wolf by night, and something entirely new in between. Darian had been exiled to the frozen wastes beyond the northern border, his claims stripped, his name forbidden in pack memory. The throne was secure. Vale ruled with a strength tempered by the gentleness he'd learned in my world, and I stood beside him, not behind him, exactly where I belonged. But tonight wasn't about politics or pack law or ancient traditions imposed by others. Tonight was ours. The clearing where I'd first shifted was transformed. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting golden light across the assembled pack. Hundreds of wolves in human form, dressed in their finest, and beyond them, scattered among the crowd, familiar faces from the human village who'd come to witness something unprecedented. 2 worlds, gathering as one. I wore a simple white dress that moved like water, my hair loose and woven with silver threads that caught the moonlight. No crown, no armor, just me. Vale stood waiting at the center of the clearing in dark ceremonial robes, his eyes finding mine across the distance, and the bond between us sang with joy. We'd written our own vows this time. No ancient words we didn't understand, no blood ritual forced by desperation. Just truth. Vale spoke first, his voice carrying through the clearing. 3 months ago, I came to you as a king demanding sacrifice. You gave me something far more valuable. You gave me a home. You taught me that strength isn't just in conquest, but in gentleness, in showing up, in choosing to stay, even when it's hard. He took my hands, his thumbs brushing over the bone mark we both carried. I choose you, Judith Crane. Not because of pack law or prophecy or bloodlines. I choose you because you are fierce and kind and impossibly stubborn, and because loving you has made me more than I ever was alone. Tears blurred my vision as I found my own words. 3 months ago, I thought safety meant isolation. You crashed into my life like a storm, and I hated you for it. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and I smiled through my tears. But you showed me that belonging doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding the parts of yourself you never knew existed. You saw me, all of me, even the parts one was afraid to see, and you loved me anyway. I squeezed his hands. I choose you, Vale Thornheart, not as my king, but as my partner, my mate, my home. The pack howled their approval as we kissed, the sound echoing through the forest and beyond, reaching the village, bridging the divide that had existed for generations. When we finally pulled apart, Vale led me to the edge of the clearing where the forest met the path to the human settlement. 2 worlds, he said softly, his arm around my waist. 1 future, I finished, leaning into him as the moon rose full and bright above us. Behind us, wolves and humans mingled, sharing food and stories, building something new from the ashes of old fears. And ahead of us, the path stretched into possibility, not separate anymore, but woven together like the silver threads in my hair, like the bond mark on our wrists, like the love we'd chosen freely under the watching moon. We'd both been searching for something to save us. Instead, we'd found something worth saving together. If you enjoyed this story and want more like it, please like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly means the world to me and helps this channel grow. Thank you for being here.